thanks to everyone for coming. We've never held an info session like this before, which is a little embarrassing because I think the ARTA program's been around for something like, I don't know, 12 or 14 years. Fulbright's been around a lot longer than that. Director's Travel Prize, this is just its second year. It's nice when that happens. So what's going to happen today? I'm Doug Sershin. Some of you know me. I'm going to talk to you more about the Architecture Research Travel Awards. Anne's going to talk to you about the Director's Travel Prize. And we've got two people here from another part of campus.
Sure. Hey everyone, I'm Janet Schrader from the Undergraduate Fellowship Office.
And I'm Louise Edwards from the Undergraduate Fellowship Office.
And so the last part of the conversation today is going to be about the Fulbright U.S. Student Program for both undergraduate Knowlton students and graduate Knowlton students who are here today. And this is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I've always felt that Knowlton students would be very interesting candidates for Fulbright grants. And if you don't know anything about Fulbright, this is a really good meeting to be in, and it's good timing because the real process doesn't start until probably in March.
Yeah, March or April, yeah.
Anne is here. Sorry. And she's going to come up and talk initially about all the programs. And I do, because we don't have a nice polished PowerPoint presentation, I did pull up the Director's Travel Prize website, which has old information on it from last year, as does the ARTA webpage. That's going to be updated soon, and we'll be sending out an email about that. I also pulled up the story about last year's winner. So I'll get out of your way initially. And
I'm glad to see so many people here. This is really, really, really excellent. So we have 3 different opportunities for you. One is the Director's Prize, then we have ARTA. The Director's Prize is for graduating undergraduate and graduate students, which is an opportunity we never had before. This was, I'm going to read from it a little bit because this was actually established by Dorothy Amber and that of the former director using her research funds. Okay, so we acknowledge her generosity in that. ARTA is for current students as well. These are all, about multicultural, global experiences, getting you out into the world. And then there's the Fulbright as well. The Fulbright is, if you don't know about the Fulbright, it's a national and international fellowship, which is for students, it's for faculty, it's for mid-career faculty. I myself have been a Fulbright scholar two times, once to Russia and once to Chile, but as a young faculty member. So these are amazing, amazing experiences. And we will be doing more of this in the future, that can be assured. We used to have a lot of travel opportunities, both in the studios and others. And over the years, there's been a kind of waning, but there's a real desire, certainly among the faculty and students, to actually begin to pick up again. Next semester, we'll be putting together a task force to just look at that relative to the pedagogical part of the program and see what we can do, and then what kind of support do we need to do financially for this. I myself, when I was teaching, every year, students everywhere, Asia, China, South America, the Mexican-American border. Okay, I cannot express to you how important this is and how much it really should again ramp up to be part of the Knowlton experience. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the Director's Prize, and as Doug said, we've pulled this together because we realized we were late. And the goal is not to make it less important, but we just need to shift the schedule to let you do it. I'm going to read from Dorothy's description of what the Director's Prize is, because it is hers and it's her generosity that's continuing it. Even though she's no longer director this year, we will find a way to keep it going and let her have her money back in the future. So she says the Director's Travel Prize celebrates excellence in Knowlton students by expanding experiential education and research through international or domestic travel, Students who are graduating from either the bachelor's or master's program are eligible. And it's up to $10,000 for each award to carry out independent travel research. It can be an individual proposal or it can be in a team proposal as well. It doesn't change the money, but and that we anticipate funding 1 to 2 proposals for summer 2025. It does not support the cost of study abroad or any formal programs. That means when you apply for this, there'll be a 2-step process to it. It's really, it needs to be a really serious proposal. I absolutely suggest you work with a faculty member or a senior student or somebody to help make something and a really important proposal. Because it's being done upon graduation, and I'll actually talk about Fernanda, who worked with me this summer. She was working with me after she came back from having been to Singapore, studying alternative construction methods that are both renewable and also sustainable and reduce the carbon footprint. She came back absolutely excited. The work was amazing. She put together a proposal which she'll bring here next January. Very, very serious work. There was only one awarded because there was only one serious proposal. Okay, so I would absolutely suggest that you work with a faculty member. The really amazing thing about this, as Doug pointed out to me, is that done well, it then becomes almost a natural entree into a Fulbright. Done with the kind of seriousness with which her proposal and what she will present is absolutely, I can say, of Fulbright quality, right? So it begins a kind of step ladder, if you will, of international experiences. And those of you that then want to go out and work internationally, all of this really helps you have an extraordinary experience and not just cobble together pieces here and there. So please take this seriously and work with faculty to get a proposal that's both rigorous, well thought out, not both, so it's a few things, rigorous, well thought out, and innovative, right? 3 weeks is the minimum time span. It can be more than that, but really it's about a 3-week trip. Okay? I can answer questions about that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Doug. Is there anything you missed about the directors?
And I think this is relevant for ARTA as well. Not every student is necessarily going to know which faculty member to work with. How would you suggest
Talk to
they?
me.
Yeah.
I have an open office policy. I have a little sign outside. I flip it. It's either open office or in a meeting. So,
Because we've
open
got
office?
faculty in the
Come
school
on in.
who've done research all over the world and would love to.
And I've been here long enough that I am in this position now and in this position before. So I have a pretty, and because my own work is very cross-disciplinary, I have a pretty good sense of who might help you.
One difference I think with this is open to international students.
And ARTA is not.
ARTA and Fulbright, you have to be an American citizen. So
Yeah.
we do have every year international students who reach out and ask about ARTA, and we just can't. And Fulbright, you just can't either. But if you are an international student.
But Fulbright has offices in other countries. Okay, so nationally, you cannot apply for the domestic, through the domestic agency if you're foreign. But many other countries also participate in the Fulbright program. Okay, I'm constantly getting things. I'm a Fulbright scholar, can I come to the US and study with you? Right? Did you have a question? Oh, it's a piece of a hand raised.
Is the Director's Travel Prize the only one that's available to like graduating students?
And the Fulbright, right?
Well, the Fulbright is too, and I think with Jamie, this is why I've said some of the information on the website is not up to date because it's actually none of it's up to date. It's from last year. We've been meeting with the Columbus Foundation. They're the ones who provide the funding that supports ARTA and sets the guidelines. And I think we're going to be able to open up ARTA to graduating students this year. And
This year?
yeah,
Okay.
and we're going to be able to help either prepay or reimburse costs right away. So you're not carrying thousands of dollars in debt around when you buy your airline ticket in March and you don't get reimbursed until October. Okay, so lots of good news about ARTA, but yeah, we've been lobbying heavily for that, and we need to get the wording down.
And is there a time, well, I know that you talk about, but I know the Director's Prize, for instance, it has to be over the summer. You can't get it now and make it for the following year. And I'm sure ARTA also has certain.
It's the same thing. There were some changes during COVID. We had some flexibility issues, but it's a summer travel experience.
Any other questions, Director?
I have two questions. How early do you recommend we start considering our proposals before we submit? Because I'm currently in my junior year, but I'd like to do this like next year. So do you think I should start now, like developing a proposal?
It's never too early to start. And those of you, how many of you are in architecture or landscape architecture? Yeah, so if you're in the design disciplines and also in planning, those of you that do the kind of creative work, planning as well, you know that day one, you enter school, you begin to develop your own sessions and your own voices, right? And I'm always asked by students, I've been teaching studio forever, right? I'm always asked, well, but I was working on this idea last year, can I do it again? And I'm like, of course, right? It's this notion of when you find your creative voice, when you find your political voice, when you find your voice of any kind, then you work. So yeah, it's never too early to start that. It's a really good question.
And it may be that you're a junior now, but because of the timing of some of these things, if you travel, whether it was the Director's Travel Prize or an ARTA grant, let's say you went this summer, you could come back and fold that into a Fulbright proposal because you have to be done with your undergraduate program at the Fulbright. And so doing it this summer might align you well with putting together a proposal next year for a Fulbright that you could go on the year after you graduate.
And in my experience, of course we want to spread the money out, right? But in my experience, the best proposals are building on something from before. That doesn't mean that one's selecting it because they've done it before and there's favoritism. It just means that the proposals become more serious. And Knowlton's always been about impact in the world. And so this is a way that you begin a kind of a path. I thought there was a question back. Oh no, that was you, Jamie, with an answer, not a question. Yeah.
You mentioned there's like a two-step application process for the Director's Prize. Could you expand on that a little bit? What is the two-step?
I can't because we have to meet and figure out exactly what that is. No, seriously, there's been a lot of changes and there's been a lot of kind of scrambling to do forensic around the school. There's a lot of stuff going on, and then we said, oh my goodness, we're late. So we decided to have this meeting, and now we will meet, and within the next 10 days, we'll
I'm
have.
sure that within the next 10 days we'll have all those details.
Yeah.
Before
We'll have it out to you. Okay, but we didn't want to put it off till we had all of our I's crossed and T's dotted. We figured, let's get you in the room first. Okay, get you thinking about it. Other questions about the Director's Prize? And then I'll hand it over. Yes. 2 questions.
Are there any like research proposal parameters? I should say with them?
Yes, there will be, and
Yeah, there was last year they used a portal to upload
Yeah.
things, and I think there were criteria. We'll have to see, based on, also last year was the first year it was done. And I think there were 5 proposals from a combination of 8 students. And as Ann noted, there was one sort of that stood above the rest. So I think part of it is also going to be like assessing how well it went last year, and maybe things need to be tweaked.
we will put that together because, again, I've been actively involved in both reading proposals, giving awards and competitions, and also doing the same myself. So we will be specific enough to know, to get the information we need to assess it. In my mind, it would be both demonstration of what you've done before, and then here's my proposal, here's the kind of conceptual underpinnings of my proposal. Here's why I think it's valuable to do. Here's what's innovative or unique about it. And here's here's what the itinerary could be, and that. And here's what I think it would cost. Just really rough. And if it's in 2 stages, the first stage will be more rough and have less requirements, and then if we pick 3 or 4 to look at more seriously, we'll add requirements to that. Does that help a little bit? That kind of thing. But we will ask for, kind of a demonstration of why this is important to you in terms of exemplar work or a paper you've written, even if it's a high school paper, right? Yeah.
For group proposals, is there like a hierarchy that will be asked in terms of like who's like the lead researcher?
In my mind, no, absolutely not. I'm all about collaboration and different talents. And you bring together different talents, and how do you say, it's not apples. If you're not comparing apples to oranges, who's to say the apple should be lead and not the orange, right? And that's how I would suggest group proposals or whatever, is that it's really about unique contributions, not my friend and I want to go to Alicia this year, right? Although, other questions? Great, okay, I'm gonna hand it over. We're on to another reading. You can have this if you want. Fernanda will be here. It's just amazing the work she did. We could not have had a better person to cap this off or to start this off and bring it.
She's at Berkeley now, right?
She's at Berkeley. Yeah, I had her working with me over the summer. I was in my startup in Palo Alto. Her and then those of you who might know Miles Feinkoff. And she's at Berkeley and he's at UPenn. Really, really good people. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
Good. Hi, Doctor.
I think when Ann mentioned that we're, a little behind this year, we've got some ARTA winners in the room, right? A few. Raise your hand. Yeah. Normally, you would have been presenting this autumn, correct?
Yeah.
We haven't been pestering you about that because we are a little behind, in case you haven't heard. So we'll be scheduling that early part of spring term. And also Fernand will be coming back to California. So we didn't, historically we tried to have the presentations and an info session all at the same time in the big stairs, and it didn't work very well because you didn't get any depth. You couldn't ask any questions. So that's really why we're breaking it apart. In the future, we'd like to have the presentations in the autumn too, but 20th anniversary and everything else got in the way. So, I think I want to start a little bit talking about some good news about ARTA and also kind of referencing something Ann said. I think sometimes the travel programs at the school are often seen as capstone experiences. You're in class and then you do a travel experience afterwards. And I think it's important to see things like ARTA, the Director's Travel Prize, as stepping stone experiences, capstone experiences. How are you building upon this? And when you're putting together proposals, you're talking about how this experience is going to help me in my plan to do the next thing. And I suspect you'll probably hear more about that in the Fulbright presentation too. So as we imagine a structures where you might get an ARTA, you might get a Director's Travel Prize, and gradually develop something that can get rolled into a very compelling Fulbright proposal, that's the ideal here. And there's really no reason why that can't work. We may need to work on our timing a little bit to make sure it all fits. But I really think that many of you could be competitive for Fulbrights, which is like the gold standard.
The fact that you're here makes you like a compelling candidate because you care. Like you're like, I want to know more.
And we're months.
Send me into the world.
So, some of you already know something about ARTA, but ARTA funds up to 30 days of independent research travel. It could be international, it could be domestic. Both ARTA, Director's Travel Prize, can be domestic. We did a lot of domestic travel during COVID, right? But most ARTA grants have been for international destinations. We've sent about 70 students abroad in the last, how many years has it been now? It's well over a decade. And it's all over the world. It's Brazil, Kenya, Italy, Iceland, Pakistan, Palestine, Switzerland, South Africa, Cambodia. No one's gone to Mexico yet, I don't think. No one, and very few like Central America winners. But it could be anywhere. Some really good news about ARTA is we have a lot more money to give out. Like substantially more money to give We had a conversation with the Columbus Foundation, and for reasons I won't get into, the amount of money that we can hand out to ARTA winners more than doubled, comfortably more than doubled. And I think what we had to do in the past was look at proposals and fund them based on the amount of money that we had available, and that was, technically ARTA can support up to 75% of your travel, lodging, and meal expenses for a trip, okay? But that's only if we had 75% of that available. And that meant if you were maybe submitting a group proposal and you were going to, Japan, it would have been very difficult for us to fund 75% of that proposal without not funding anyone else. I think moving forward, we've got that money. We should be able to fund those proposals fully. And by fully, I mean 75%, at least for the years to come. So we need more proposals, and we need really good proposals. And so that's why working with a faculty member, talking to Anne or me or your section head to try to identify who on faculty here might be a good person to work with really will help you a lot. So we've got more money to give out. We will be able to do some sort of reimbursement or prepay for expenses before you leave school in the spring, which is something that's been needed for a long time because not everyone can just carry thousands and thousands of dollars of debt around for 6 months. So that should help make this a much more equitable kind of program so more people can take part. As I want to make clear one thing too, architecture is in the title. That's just how the program was set up, but it's not just about architecture. In fact, I think in recent years we've had more planning and landscape architecture students win this award than architecture students. So again, don't be put out by the name. ARTA is for everyone at the school. Undergraduate, master's program. I think we've even had some PhD students apply for this program as well. I would say it is for independent research. And I think the Director's Travel Prize is not, they don't spell out that word. And I think it would be important if you're thinking of making a proposal as part of a group of 2 or 3 people, that you think about the way in which the group can benefit independently from this. Maybe you're from different disciplines, maybe you're going to be going to a place and then visiting different sites, I don't know, but please be thinking of that because you need to be stressing the sort of your particular role in what might be a group proposal. Okay. I'm going to say one more thing about the budgets. Every year, and I think this was it's mentioned on the website, the Out-of-Date website, and it's just like what Ann was saying about the Director's Travel Prize. This cannot help support a study abroad program, whether it's a Knowlton program or an Ohio State program. We have had students who've traveled on a study abroad program, and then afterwards they wanted to do a 30-day independent research. That can work, but it cannot help fund your travel program, which I think we had half a dozen proposals a couple years ago who refused to hear that message. They weren't eligible, we couldn't do that. Also, if you're putting together a proposal, I would highly recommend, if before you submit it, that you reach out to Jamie Mollison in the back of the room, our business manager, and talk to Jamie about your proposed budget. Every year, students fail to include expenses that ARTA will cover. Travel doesn't just mean your airline ticket. Travel means your train tickets or bus tickets, or you had to rent a car, or whatever the case may be. So you need to be asking for what you can legitimately have ARTA cover and not including the things that it can't cover. We cannot buy you a drone, which has been asked for multiple times. We can't buy a backpack. We can't buy stuff. It's travel its meal, and its lodgings, but that includes a lot, especially with airfare being pretty darn expensive. But Jamie would much rather look at your proposed budget before you submit than after the fact when we're trying to disentangle things and you realize that, oh, actually, you can't do the trip because you can't afford to, buy the mountain cycle that you need to go through the Andes. Okay, questions? Yeah.
So how hard a vest is that 30 day? Let's say that we have to do 2 months.
We've never funded anything that's been 2 months long. It does say up to 30 days. It's been more people who proposed shorter visits. We funded those, but you could go for 2 months. And I think, Jamie, we'd have to figure out, I'm assuming, for example, your airfare probably wouldn't be affected by that, but we couldn't fund 2 months of lodging or 2 months of meals.
Yeah, so it would be like what we probably support a portion of it. Yeah, but I mean, the length of time, I don't think that.
Yeah, I mean, it's meant to get students,
Right.
it's meant to get students off, out of here and somewhere else in the world, so. I mean, it makes it more of an immersion experience, and
Right.
I think but yeah, we'd have a perfect example of why you'd want to talk to Jamie before submitting the proposal. Thank you. Any other questions? So we'll update this information. The deadline is going to be probably the end of January, around February 1st. It's always around then, and then the decision makers here are going to be primarily Jamie's involved in the budget side. It's usually the director and the section heads. So it's kind of the executive committee of the school. As I mentioned, we'll be doing presentations. I'm not sure if it'll be in the big stairs or in another space, but we'll have Fernanda come back from California. We'll have this summer's ARTA winners come and present. And that'll be enough. Maybe we can get some pizza money for that. Okay, I will send an email out to all the students once we've updated everything, and I will also be emailing everyone about this presentation, including your PowerPoint and notes and contact information. If you do have a question, right?
Are there any things that they look for within proposals?
I'm sure they are looking for something in those proposals, but it's going to be a different group. The judges are different this year, and I think has a different perspective than Dorothy did.
And I think there is a place on the website where you can look at past proposals
Oh,
that have been
yeah.
accepted. That's probably a good place to percolate on some of the ideas to see if somebody has done something somewhat similar. I think you can go back almost a decade.
2014.
I think there were some years that I remember, I feel like most of the proposals that were accepted were more interdisciplinary, so students across sections trying to kind of collaborate on something. And some years where we didn't see any of those proposals. So yeah, I think this is probably a great place to kind of get some ideas about what's worked for other students. And I think to Doug's point of, it's a different group that's reviewing these this year than in the past, but generally I think this is probably a good place to start.
Amber, we may have
You know what I'm
videos that
writing
need to
down.
get added to this playlist. I know we do.
Yes.
But these are the presentations that run the big stairs after the students come back. And it really gives you a sense of just the diversity of the projects that people undertook. I also want to make sure though, as we not having had Fulbright as part of this conversation before, I want the school's leadership to also understand that ARTA isn't sort of the end of the story, right? And so if you are proposing an experience saying, I am preparing to apply for a post-baccalaureate grant, then that puts it into a different context. I think sometimes they've looked for what's the most polished, and I think the amount of funding that we have for the program might mean that we can consider, we've got this great proposal by this more advanced graduate students, but then we've got someone who's a junior who's thinking about like, oh, I'm gonna go abroad and I'm gonna make connections with potential affiliates in a country that I wanna be applying for. I'm working on language fluency that might make my Fulbright more competitive. And that's an investment on the school's part for what might be coming later. So I think it's kind of a different game than used to be the case. So, so that's my babbling answer to your question. Okay, any more questions? Yeah.
Aside from, say, like an active war zone or places that OSU says are no-nos, is there any specific limit on places that you might go to in international travel, or just
There
reasonable expectations?
No, there haven't been. I mean, we work with the Office of International Affairs. You know, there is, ARTA students register with the university. There's an office that deals with,
What's that phrase? There's like a.
it was who was it? It was Drew Simmons used to be in that position. But I mean, I do think that we may run into situations where, and I don't recall this, but if there are specific, if there's a concern that does the student, this is part of Fulbright too, the school might say, can this person really pull this off? They have language skills, do they, and there may be that, but I'm not familiar with anything.
It's just the concept of the university's duty of care. As far as, we should provide necessary information that will make sure that you're doing a safe trip.
And I think if you're a current student, OIA does have, like, there are places you can't go.
Right. Correct, yeah. Okay, you're up.
It's so delightful to be part of this conversation because yes, Fulbright absolutely, like, should be part of the conversation. Listen to presenter mode, and Louise, you can come over here if you want. So, as we said, I'm Janet.
And I'm Louise.
And we're from the Undergraduate Fellowship Office. Welcome to our show. We do a lot of these presentations, rarely to so many people in one room in the flesh. Most of our stuff happens online so that we can reach more folks. We're going to talk explicitly about the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, but as I was listening, I was thinking about the Critical Language Scholarship, which is a fellowship that sends students abroad for an 8 to 10 week summer language immersion program, fully funded. And I'll keep brainstorming other fields that we in the Undergraduate Fellowship Office facilitate application processes and support students as they apply. But we're mostly going to talk about Fulbright.
Sure. So today we'll talk a little bit about the purpose of the Fulbright U.S. Student Program and discuss different types of Fulbright grants, their application components, their eligibility requirements, and reflect on why you might choose to apply to a Fulbright grant. I think we've kind of gone through a little bit of that in terms of thinking about going international and what that can do, but we'll talk a little bit more specifically about Fulbright and to understand the application process at Ohio State.
And I just want to, can you go back one? I think that this, the application component, part of this gets at your question about like what's in a good proposal, or the question about, like, I don't know the specific parameters of the Knowlton Awards, but for a lot of fellowships, there's kind of some standard things that you need to make sure you're including in an application as you're telling your story about who you are and what you're trying to do in the world. So what is Fulbright? Fulbright is, the Fulbright U.S. Student Program. I should also say there are so many component parts of Fulbright. This is specifically the U.S. Student Program, not the Fulbright Scholar Program, not Fulbright's United Kingdom Summer Institute, not lots of other things. This is explicitly the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, which offers research, study, and teaching opportunities in over 140 countries to recent graduates. And by recent graduates, anyone, we'll get to this in eligibility, but I'll say it now, from finishing undergrad until you have a PhD in hand, you are eligible for the Fulbright U.S. Student Program. The Fulbright program awards approximately 2,200 grants annually to students in all fields of study. So we're really excited to be here with you because the Knowlton students are an untapped resource in terms of who our office reaches in our Fulbright work. Okay, here's the history. In 1945, so this is how long the Fulbright program has been around, Senator J. William Fulbright introduced a bill in the U.S. Congress that called for the use of surplus war property to fund the, quote, promotion of international goodwill through the exchange of students in the fields of education, culture, and science. And this fundamental principle of international partnership remains the core of the Fulbright's values today. One thing I'll say, so the Fulbright U.S. student program is about taking U.S. students and sending them abroad. There are international students from around the world here in the U.S. also as part of the Fulbright program, but that's not the U.S. student program. That's a different aspect of Fulbright. So I hope that's clear.
So let's talk a little bit more specifically about what a Fulbright grant is. It is 1 year abroad, sometime after your undergraduate education. So if you're a current junior, you could start applying in the spring, in March and April, to go abroad after you graduate. If you're a current senior, you could still apply, and you would have a little bit of gap in between your graduation and when you go abroad. And if you are a graduate student, you can apply during your program, you could apply between a master's and a PhD program. So kind of lots of different options for how that application happens and when. And there are 3 different branches of Fulbright, so 3 different things you could do abroad during this year. One is to teach English abroad in kind of all different levels, everything from kindergarten to university students. The second thing is to conduct independent research, so you would find a partner abroad that you want to work with and propose a project. And the third one is to study at a university. So this is often for students who have earned their bachelor's degrees and are going on to earn a master's or a PhD. You could spend a year abroad doing that degree.
I will say about the research, that feels like this springboard, like the ARTA grant, the director's prize, the research. Because I guess this is on the next slide. Go to the next. Oh, sorry.
So really, Fulbright is an opportunity to meet, work, live with people in your host country and build connections with them, share daily experiences, and also share what it is to be an American with them. Grant lengths can vary somewhat a little bit, usually between 6 months and a year, but kind of more towards the year. And the dates of when you would go also vary. Often they're aligned with kind of the U.S. education system, but also sometimes countries have different education schedules, so it might also align with the host country's schedule. But yeah, we'll start about a year in length.
So importantly, the majority of the experience of Fulbright is funded. So all U.S. student Fulbright grants include round-trip transportation to your host country, funding to cover room, board, and incidental costs based on the cost of living in the host country, and so that's basically a stipend. Some of the countries help you find a place to stay. Most of them, you're on your own to find a place to stay. You know approximately how much money you will get from Fulbright each month, and you figure out how you can live on that in that country. And then it also accident and sickness health benefits are included as part of the Fulbright grant.
Fulbright eligibility. So you do have to be a U.S. citizen or national, as we said before. You do have to have a bachelor's degree or equivalent before the start of the grant period, so you can apply while you're still an undergraduate student. But then when you go on the grant, you would have graduated already, or of course as a master's or PhD student as well. And each grant has its own set of other kind of eligibility requirements and preferences. So you can go on the Fulbright website and there's a whole list of all the 140 countries you can go to and all the grants for each country. So you can look on their profile and see for each grant kind of what they're looking for in candidates, and if there's specific requirements around language. Some of them have language preferences, some of them don't. Some of them have preferences for certain degrees, some of them don't. So kind of looking into those specifics
more. So when Doug sends this to you, you can go to this link. If you're even thinking about it, highly recommend. Click that link, pick the country that you're thinking about, and read the grant description. Every single country's description is different about what they're looking for, about how the experience is shaped. So to go read one of those is very informative, and it can help you, especially if you're a few years out from this and you're super interested. It can help you think about, oh, these are the things this place is looking for. I haven't had that experience yet. I better work on it if I really want that to happen. And then you can really see some of the expectations of what you need, the eligibility requirements. Okay, this is what I wanted to say before about the proposals and stuff. Application materials and why should you apply? Thank you. So again, all of them are slightly different, but there is kind of a shared structure for Fulbright applications. Lots of biographical information, short answers about you, but the biggest chunks of the application are the statement of grant purpose and the personal statement. And these are the things that relate, I think, to the proposals that y'all were talking about for the other applications. So your statement of grant purpose, if you're applying to be an English teaching assistant, it's 1 page. If you're applying to do study or independent research, it's 2 pages. And the kinds of content that are included is, why do you want Fulbright? Why do you want to go to this country? Why do you want to do this grant type? What is your relevant experience? And if you're proposing to do a research project, then you also have to share, what is your project? What are you trying to understand? What questions are you asking? What methods will you use? What resources in country will you need to be able to accomplish this research project that you're proposing? 2 pages maybe seems like a lot until you start writing and you're like, this is not enough pages. I have more to say, right? But you really need to get a lot of content into those research proposals. And if you're applying to be an ETA, then it's similarly why do you want to teach English? What skills do you have? How is teaching English in this country going to help you make progress towards your career goals? The personal statement is more about who you are. It can sort of be narrative, designed to give the reader an idea of who you are as a person, what your background is, how it led you to be applying for a Fulbright, and your future plans. When relevant, so some countries, the countries that have foreign language requirements, you have to have a foreign language evaluation. All of the applications require 3 letters of reference. If you're applying to be an ETA, your references fill out a form. If you're applying to do study research, your references write letters that they submit, a transcript. And for the folks that are doing open research awards, so this is one of those things where you're like, I'm proposing an independent research project. I'm not proposing to be affiliated, I'm not proposing to do a graduate degree at an institution. I just want to do this research. You have to have some sort of affiliation with folks in country, whether that's a university or a nonprofit or just some sort of organization that makes sense, that maybe has resources that you'll be able to use to be able to accomplish. Again, you are demonstrating you know what you want to do. You are demonstrating that you have the capacity to do what you're proposing you can do. You're demonstrating that you realize you can't do it on your own. You are going to need support while you're there, and these are people who can support you. All of that sort of your whole application is showing that about you.
So I apply, lots of good reasons. So it's an opportunity to build on language skills if you already have language skills, or to develop new language skills if you don't currently know another foreign language, as well as develop cultural and abroad experience. It gives you some time to figure out life plans, especially if you're kind of finishing a degree and trying to figure out what you might do next. This gives you some time to think about that, and also at the same time build experience. So you're gaining teaching experience or research experience, or experience as a grad student for professional development. And these can lead to kind of various different pathways. Both the study research grants and the English teaching grants are pathways to all sorts of different, professional school, grad school, international employment, things that could come next for you that show you're really capable of kind of intercultural communication, working with others, cultural sensitivity, global citizenship, pursuing a goal to help others together. So it shows all these really strong qualities to potential employers. And in the application process itself, this is something that we want to really touch on because these are competitive opportunities. So sometimes students want to know what's the likelihood that I get this award and should I apply if maybe I won't get it. And in the application process, we like to say there's a lot of value there in and of itself of putting together these applications. It really improves your writing skills. It's an opportunity to clarify your goals of what might come next, and a way to build connections with mentors, both on campus, with the professors you're working with the mentors you're working with, as well as abroad if you're doing that independent research. You're building networks of international professionals as well. And it's a way to gain skills to apply to other awards. So often students who apply to the Fulbright, hopefully they get it, but even if they don't, they often are applying to other things, whether that's graduate school, whether that's jobs, or other grants and fellowships. They apply the skills they learn from putting together a Fulbright application to those and are often successful in those areas.
We at the time of when Fulbright is announcing the winners, the awardees, recipients, we have multiple times had students who got multiple offers for competitive fellowships. They got a Fulbright and they got the James Gaither Junior Fellowship at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and they had to pick. They got a Princeton and Latin America grant and they got their Fulbright and they had to pick. That's amazing, but they wouldn't have, there's no way that they would have gotten both of those opportunities, I think, if they hadn't done the Fulbright process, because it's the Fulbright process that helped them articulate their visions that then they apply, because the Fulbright deadline is early fall and those other awards deadlines are later in the year. So they took all of that Fulbright material and they put it into other applications that they also were successful at, which is really cool and exciting. Okay, the application process. And I think maybe I'll do both of these because this is super short. Louise and I are from the Undergraduate Fellowship Office. So undergraduate is in our name. We only work with undergraduate students on the Fulbright program. Graduate students, you would work with the Office of International Affairs. None of our colleagues from OIA were available today, so that's why Louise and I are doing this presentation, but we're gonna have you fill out a form if you're interested in more information, and any graduate students who are interested, we will get your information to OIA. So to kind of clarify the timeline, in this coming spring, we, along with OIA, will host Fulbright Week. Fulbright Week is just a week long of programming, info sessions like this. Spoiler, you don't have to go to one. Now you understand kind of what the program is. So you can do more interesting programming. Louise has been working on a bunch of different panels of Fulbrighters abroad, BIPOC students abroad, LGBTQ+ students abroad, people abroad, where students, one of our panels last year, all the students were currently in country. So people were on that panel from Poland, in Austria, in, I don't remember what else. Vietnam. So students, so during Fulbright Week, we have events kind of like that, where you can hear from actual people who either are back from their Fulbright or are currently on their Fulbright. We have writing workshops, we have just lots of different programming. So that starts in late March or early April. Every year it's sort of a different timeline. And then in the summer, you would start working on drafts of your application essays and just the application broadly. If you're an undergraduate student, we have a summer, we have multiple different offerings in the summer, but we have a faculty fellow, Professor Thomas McDowell from the Department of History. He runs a 6-week writing workshop that at the end of that writing workshop, you have a very strong personal statement and statement of grant purpose. The group, it's a kind of, you work independently, but you get a lot of feedback from your peers, you get feedback from Professor McDowell, you get feedback from us. If you are grad students, they do that. They do something as well, right?
Yeah, they have a series of I would say info sessions / workshops that kind of break down the process. So they have one on the statement of grant purpose, one on the personal statement, one on the short answer. So there is a series of opportunities as well that you can take part in the summer.
And Louise also offers similar workshops if you can't participate in Professor McDowell's if you can't commit to like 6 weeks showing up on Zoom 2 hours a week in the summer. I mean, that's not possible for everyone. So Louise does a similar kind of like standalone workshop series. This part feels really important because I actually think the timeline is very confusing. So if you're currently a junior and you want to go abroad on a Fulbright after you graduate, you would start working this summer. In mid-August, you would submit your application for the campus deadline. We have this evaluation. Is it evaluation? Is that what we're calling it? Yes. The campus committee evaluation early in the fall, and then the national deadline is in early October of your senior year, or later. That's fine, but I'm like speaking to the juniors right now. And so you would submit that in the fall of your senior year, and then over the course of that year, maybe there's interviews, maybe you just find out you got the award, which is awesome, and then you would go abroad after you graduate. If you're a senior right now, you could still do, right? You would still do this, right? This summer, you would work on your essays, you would submit by the campus deadline. The national deadline's in October, but then you wouldn't go abroad. Like if you start your application this summer of 2025, you would go abroad in 2026. Does that make sense? Like, so you really have to like imagine a very long timeline in this process. Are you interested in learning more? We're gonna take questions in a moment. So this is a super duper simple form. It just, if you want to be added to our contact list, where we will send you updates about our Fulbright Week programming, we're doing an info session with Fulbright next week. We would send you information about that, etc. Do this form. It just asks for your name dot number, and whether you are an undergraduate student or a graduate student. Like I said, we will convey contact information for graduate students to our colleagues in OIA, but then undergraduate students, we would be in touch with you from our office. So we'll give you a second. While folks are getting that up, the next slide is just asking if you have questions. So what are your questions? Yeah.
As somebody who was too lazy to do this sort of thing when he had the opportunity.
Regrets, man.
I have all sorts of questions, but you guys do too, so I'll try to restrain myself. This is a competitive process, as you said, and yet the application numbers and the number of awards vary so considerably from country to country.
Yeah.
You might think that there's a foreign language requirement for a country because they speak Danish, but there probably isn't in that country, and I think don't self-censor your sort of like your dreams here. The website somewhere in there, you can look at the data. You can see how many people applied last year. You can see how many grants were available, and it's shocking that applying to the UK.
Applying to the UK is really hard.
It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Right? But
not all of the awards in the UK either.
right, there are so many, but there are other countries where you're like, oh my gosh, very few people even applied. And so as you are looking at those numbers, you can approach this. There are people who apply for Fulbrights on their own.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going through an office like this, and they don't have that insider's perspective on strategy.
Yeah.
You can look at it and start to realize, going to France to do this might be hard. Going to Belgium might be easier.
Or Morocco.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so just understand it's competitive, but it's not impossible.
And okay, so this year we had, or I don't know, last year we'll say, we had like 45 to 50 undergraduate students who applied, and we had 14 or 15 who got it. We have very good odds. So if you're an undergraduate student and you're thinking about applying for it, please come work with us, because we can really help you.
Another question?
Yeah.
Unlike our programs, could you talk about like the research track? Like you're not correct. You're not presenting anything at the end of this
No.
process.
No.
And in a way, doesn't Fulbright want you to just go abroad and have an experience that sort of defines the rest of your life in some way? They want you to change. Maybe you may go there with a research proposal and you get there and it goes
And
off
you
in
do
some
your best.
direction.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, so you're writing this research proposal, and of course it's from the U.S. as you're imagining it in the future going abroad, but that changes as you go abroad and as you meet new people abroad and as you connect with new organizations abroad, right? So it has a lot of flexibility of what it becomes in the end. And while in your proposal you'll talk a little bit about what kind of the final completion of this is, whether it's a presentation abroad or a paper or whatever it might be, that also is something that can change. And so you're really thinking about this as an experience abroad that can inform your career and your life in the future.
Other questions? Yeah.
You mentioned how we have to have affiliations with people there. Does this mean you have to make connections before applying for the scholarship? And does the school have any available resources to help us make these connections?
Great question. So you do have to have that affiliation by the time of the application. It is understood that it is a process to find that, right? And actually, it's kind of hard to identify appropriate affiliations until you've kind of crafted your proposal, right? Until you've figured out what is it that I'm really trying to do. Here's the thing: if you do the Director's Prize, if you do ARTA, you will have already kind of cultivated relationships with people and organizations and the places. Maybe that you're going to, but maybe not. Sometimes it is a matter. I think, does the school have resources to help you? Not necessarily, not explicitly. If you asked me that question and you were applying, I would say go to your mentors here in the school, or other people on campus. Ask them who they know. Sometimes it's a matter of cold emailing. Lots of people do that too, and they get exactly what they need. So I would say your own connections, the connections of your mentors, and cold emailing is often the way that students get those affiliations. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
Is there one category that usually gets selected over the other, research?
It is totally, here's the thing that we really advise is what is the best thing for you? That's the thing to apply for. So there isn't really, it is so personal to every individual student about what they want to do next, what they've done so far, what they, just what they want, that we support students across the board in those. I guess I understand that our predecessor really tried to steer undergraduate students to ETAs, but we have not been doing that. If that's what a student wants to do, excellent. If a student wants to do research, excellent. If a student wants to do study, excellent. We'll help you figure out how to put the best application forward. Yeah?
Can you do research and study at a different institute?
Yeah, so I would say if you are applying to study, that's kind of your main grant focus, but study programs often have research components, especially in different countries, right? Those master's or PhD degrees often have a study component. For example, in the UK, there's whole degrees that are really just doing research. So I would say it depends on the program, but the answer is yes.
Other questions? Yeah.
Has anybody ever kind of delayed their travel opportunity if something else comes up, or would they have to do it immediately, when they said it?
You have to do it immediately. Yeah, so those students who had to pick, one of them said no to her Fulbright, the other one said yes to her Fulbright. So you do just have to, you have to pick. Yeah. I mean, but gosh, the things they were picking between were just incredible opportunities, right? So, will you go to the next slide? Here is, our website is ufo.osu.edu, and Louise and I are both available at fellowships at osu.edu. Louise is actually our primary, does the majority of our Fulbright advising, and I am kind of along for the ride. I will say, in addition, I mentioned CLS. For students who are thinking about Fulbrights and maybe thinking about a Fulbright to the UK, there are a couple of other scholarship opportunities. The Marshall Scholarship funds 2 years of graduate study in the UK. The Rhodes Scholarship funds 2 years of study and graduate study in the UK. There are other opportunities that are listed on our website that, if this is interesting to you, maybe go to the website and check out some of those other, like the language opportunities. All of the fellowships we work with are external to Ohio State. So none of the things that we work on students with are funded by Ohio State or Ohio State programs. They are all external organizations, but there's lots of opportunities listed there. It would be great to see you.
Terrific. And I think there's a class in June.
Okay.
So we have to, we're being addicted.
Thank you all.
so much.
Yeah.
And I will send this information out